All right, we got some old chess games queued up that I need to review. Uh, Starting out this summer, I realized the backlog is just too thick. Can't add any more. We got to send it out. I wanted to have it organized, cleaned up, but what we're going to do instead is we're going to clean it up later, and we're just going to run it out there. So, thanks for tuning in. This is part of my summer series. I think I played this tournament last summer and had a couple fun games in it that I wanted to save just from the full experience. It was yeah, it was the monthly Super Blitz arena from a few years back. So it looks like this was played on June 28th, 2022. So it's had like 3 years to sit in my backlogs, marinate, think about, um, and I kept it, because these are keeper games. My performance in this turned out, I played 5 games, and I won 2, lost 3. So this first one is, well, I don't want to be too spoilers, but yeah, the first one is me here playing for white. And so in this game, we'll just walk through it. I actually had ChessGPT try to commentate, but it doesn't do it. It's still it can help you out just like Stockfish can, but it doesn't connect the dots in the right way. It's just a little strange. It needs a little bit more of my narration, I think, to learn. I gotta train ChatGPT so that it can actually comment and become ChessGPT like it should. Anyways, kicked it off with the Polish before opponent comes back with e5. So they're attacking my pawn, but I don't care because they they pop their pawn out here in the middle where I can just snap it off. So this is part of this. Quickly, they're I don't need to defend that pawn. I can go after their pawn. So we'll go pawn for pawn. And opponent brings his knight out, which is important at this point. You needed to develop something. This bishop was, of course, aiming to get into the corner here. Okay, but we'll see. I actually am trying to taunt my opponent a little bit here, right? And I've actually played this type of line often in Bullet, where I play the Polish. I know my opponent's going to just grab pawns in the beginning. Sometimes they'll leave a pawn hanging while I'm aggressively developing my bishops. And then I'll even gambit another pawn, right? Hoping that I can get a little activity crushing black's king side. And they go for it. They take another pawn. And so it opens up a pawn for me though, right? So I'm gambiting pawns, but I'm actually making my opponent give up material. So they're not sacrifices, right? They're sort of sneaky moves is how I call them. These would be sneaky tricks a little bit, seeing if my opponent is paying much attention. Now the rook's under attack, so they need to move their rook here, but if they don't, they have one other great option, which this is actually fantastic, right? So you'll see here the brilliance. My opponent is like, Coach Chad, those are sneaky tricks. You can have the rook, right? Because if I take the rook, it's game over. Okay, so let's see, how did I choose to defend? Well, if you're looking ahead in the log, it's knight h3, which is interesting because although I've given up this weakness on the G file, there's no pawn supporting the knight. My bishop's still helping out, and my knight's coming in just in time to defend this key square where my king is like, yeah, I'm about to be checkmated, bro. Okay, so next, now that I've made the essential move, black gets a chance to move that rook that I was going to now attack once I've done the essential defensive maneuvers. Bishop returns, also just centralizing itself, seeing if my opponent wants to be sneaky. And now they're bringing knight out, attacking my bishop. Bishop's got to move probably, and wanted to do drop back, see if they would maybe trade off a bishop here. Might simplify the position. But they don't go for the trade immediately. And I'm okay to wait and see if they want the trade. I actually like this queen move is kind of strange. Probably not the best move at this point. I'm sure you could find something better than queen d to c1 here. But let's see if I have an idea up my sleeve with this, right? It's giving my king an extra space to move. It's sort of moving my queen into a position where she might get on the fianchetto, which is sort of, I think, what my idea was in this game, which I played, again, 3 years ago. This is a throwback. The opponent brings their knight to the center of the board, giving up sort of that scholar's mate attack because, well, I've defended it with my knight, yeah. So I can bring another queen. Like I said, I was going to probably bring that queen out and get it on the long diagonal, right? So I brought my queen here, over here, so that it can be part of this with the bishop, right? And we're actually creating a double attack here, right? If they don't, if they're not trying to trade on their next move, something might open up for white here. So they return to this sort of aggressive line here, but my knight's defending good, so we're fine. We're fine. And I can even bring a pawn here to obstruct the vision, right? So bishop might want to move, might not be able to really be much help in this attack. And I think was I sleeping? All of a sudden, I'm losing my knight. So I'm like, oh wait, I actually have had this knight hanging for a good second because they forgot here that this double attack is not enough. So my opponent blundered by not taking advantage of this, right? When I move here, that was a big blunder, right? But we didn't see it, right? I was sort of distracting by being aggressive and sort of coming after here. Now, if they take it right here, I might take, right? So this would be interesting if at this point, if they take my bishop, or if they take with the bishop, I might take their knight, and then if they recapture here, I might take here, okay? So it's not exactly a blunder yet. It's kind of, it's a Zwischenzuggy-ish, And so they sort of, I think, took time to defend there, and now is where I blunder, okay? I need to do something here because my knight is just completely hanging now. But did I blunder again, right? Because look, so so when they come back here, look, I'm totally forking, but there's kind of enough defense here, so I actually needed to play this because the queen's helping out of this attack. If I just go d4 here trying to play this fork, they can actually take the exchange because after bishop, my queen can't recapture. The queen's there to clean up. So this move sort of sets up that fork that I would like, and I'm like giving up the knight to do so. So was it a blunder? Stockfish probably takes that knight off the board. And here's where I go for it, right? Because yeah, see, I was a little bit late, right? So I'm late on all this, right? So I know that my opponent's trying to dismantle this knight, who's a key defender, and I probably should just take here because my queen's helping take here, but this was a bullet tournament, so we're playing pretty fast, or I guess Blitz. Right? You see on my clock I have about a minute 15 on each side, minute 30, and so this move is probably enough to make things complicated. Why'd you have to go and make things so complicated? Well, Coach Chad had ideas, right? Complications are okay. I got defensive ideas, counterattacks, and all that. So at this point, my opponent is just snagging material, just left and right. I grabbed a knight, they grabbed a knight plus a bishop, but I can still keep defending. But I'm also looking at weaknesses all over the board. My queen's hungry, setting up a fork here and capturing a pawn. So although I could have just taken rook here, taken the bishop back and tried to see like if this is a defendable back rank area, instead I go on the offensive. With my queen, I'm going here, and now I'm threatening this piece, and after this piece falls, it's a fork. Who knows, the king is looking like multiple attackers are in the area. Now, this completely gave up my bishop here. I just left my bishop hanging. But skewer time, right? It's like, so is it going to pay? Let's see. Oh, and the skewer does not necessarily pay, right? Because queen could defend. It looked like a skewer, but the queen jumps back to defend. So I trade queens with tempo, and now let's count material. I got rook, rook, knight, first, knight, bishop, rook. Okay, so I like my major pieces here. I also have way better pawns, it seems. So my opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns versus my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns. And these ones being connected here in the middle seem like they should pass, but it's not enough time to really play this endgame out in a pass pawn way. And we're still looking for tactics all over the board. So they needed to move the knight. That's probably a great move. I bring my king up. He's in check, so he has to move. No one can take the knight. Now knight's attacking my rook, but we can set up again. Love to just simplify the board with skewers when we can. And so here I get that pawn behind him. He had to move the knight. There was really no other option there, I don't think. I mean, I guess, yeah, actually we maybe had better here to defend the knight. Since it is a skewer, you know you're losing that piece, but now my king can't really get in there. So that actually might have been a good idea here for black to, in time crunch, 16 seconds, kind of tricky. So they're defending the pawn. I'm finally developing my b1 to c3 knight, going after pawn. They're just sort of almost making random moves at this point, it seems like. I mean, that really low on time. I'm just blitzing them hard. So I have a few good ideas here. I could take the pawn, which comes with check. But even better, looks like I could bring the pawn up. But being blitz, I might have just been trying to flag this guy and just crushing the clock here. So that was with check. Now we could take another pawn with check again. And now I could have played the fork here again with my pawn, but I decided to keep my knight on the board, keep those powerful pieces. They can try to find their attack, but I'm crushing their pawns, and I have my rooks about to connect. So I can trade off the bishop, and I just love this now because there's no way for them to defend their pawns. Once they capture my knight, it's just about over. I mean, there's some care I should take to try to maybe do it with class and style and efficiency, but this is just a clean, clear the board type of situation now. I gotta, of course, watch out for some tricks, right? They would like to, the rook and the knight can't coordinate, so you gotta at least be a little bit careful, defend this pawn. And at this point, it's just not much left. So my opponent has 3 seconds, I got 8 seconds. And we're just checking, and the king's got nowhere to run back here, right? So all they can do is block, and voila, easy as that. Rook d takes d6, and that's checkmate. So it's a nice looking checkmate in the middle of the board. Usually what you want to do when you get an advantage. Hard to say, really, though, whether if I really kind of gave some back on that. it was a good tournament, right? So I started off with that first win, and whew, didn't keep it locked in. Okay, I could have kept it more locked in for games the next few, but let's see if I can quickly get us back to the next round. Huzzah! Bear with me while we load in game 2. You should see it coming up here now. Oh yeah, typical, typical. I didn't even know the game started. So my opponent got a freebie. I was so jazzed up on my last win, I didn't even get my first move in there, which sometimes happens on VHS. You got to be careful. My opponent played D4. I would have played G5, knowing who I am. I'm Coach Chad. I play the board to win. After they take, I bring my bishop out here, and they might have ideas here to, a lot of ideas. Typical here, you've already got a piece developed, so you might want to develop your knight. You might want to get this pawn out to get the bishop developed. You might want to develop this knight. You might want to bring this pawn out by 2 to try to make sure the bishop has somewhere to go. Let's just pretend they did that. The board, by default, for Coach Chad follows up with this idea. And now maybe they see, like, oh, I can't take because it's a weakness. So now it tempts their bishop to maybe come back so that they can take. But it sort of puts the idea on my opponent to decide, what do you want to do here? And a lot of times I think I see this come up. Because again, sometimes you want to develop here or defend it. I don't know what exactly Stockfish would pick here. They might just give the pawn and sort of continue to develop as well. So you don't even necessarily need to do anything about this. But for the sake of this game, I think, yeah, this is why I play the board. I like to see what my opponents do, knowing that I'm intending to set up a nice attack here in the middle. So it's like, let's say, for example, the knight comes out just because like a default move. I'm already winning a pack of pawns, right? So that would be a bad move. So a lot of times, I think most opponents, if they don't want to spend a lot of time thinking on this, which they don't, it's the opening and it's a blitz game, they're going to get that knight out, something like knight f3, and then I can't take right away. But when they play that line, I'm usually have two ideas here, right? I can check and try to set up a pin exploit situation, or I can be more accurate and aim at the weakness, okay? And this is usually when you'll see a bishop retreat, they'll notice that weakness, or sometimes a very slow and inaccurate move will come up here, like something like this, which is not great because this actually gives me more visibility at your rook, and you have to be very critical. So, all right, this didn't happen. This game, I was so jazzed up on my last W that I just timed out. Lost. Black didn't even move. I was playing for black. I didn't even move. So sometimes, you look at someone's rating and you'd be like, yeah, you need to pay attention, man. Like, you're giving away easy points, which is my case here. But who knows? This was probably a really tough game. 1900 versus 1700. And it was, lead chess. This is for fun. It's for training. Most important is that I stored this little experience so that we could look back at it. So now we got a free look at how I play the board because of that. So next game in this set, pull up real quick. Again, I drew the black pieces again. So let's see if I was locked in. or how I handled this next one. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, so you can kind of see my clock. Hopefully that's not cut out. Yeah, 3-minute game is what we're getting started on here. So I'm playing for black, and my opponent starts out with d4. So my preamble here, we'll see if how accurate I was with it. So I come up with the g5, which is standard board theory. They take the pawn, take the gambit, take the free candy, take, they got that juicer bishop out, baby. Well, I'll bring my juicer out, right? And that's the whole idea, is get my bishop on the fianchetto as fast as possible. Bishop g7 on move 2 is just, it's paid so many dividends in speed chess. In classical, it makes my opponents nervous in the beginning, in the opening, and sometimes they'll just blunder. So they defend the pawn, which the pawn's already defended, right? But this also this move with to e3 here lets the bishop out. So I bring my pawn. Like I said, c5 is almost always what I'm bringing out when they have a pawn in the middle against the board, so that I can see how close they're paying attention. If they, of course, this is critical, right? They can't, a lot of times they just want to take this and they're not expecting this huge attack, this long range vision. It's a kindergarten mistake, it's a youngster's mistake, but it can happen, and I don't want to win by stealing a rook, but I will. I'll steal the rook all day. Okay, so they're not exchanging. They're locked in. They're paying attention. But I'm going to keep attacking the weakness. Okay, queen's attacking b2, but it's also defending this whole central structure. And it looks like I'm just, all I care about is here, but really I'm caring about here. Right? Okay. Oops. Jump to the end. Spoiler alert. Okay. So after I brought my queen out, they counter. They say, I see you. I see you with your queen. I'll just counter. I'll defend. I'll counter with my queen. And so I say, I don't need to trade queens. I mean, if you want to trade queens, that actually helps me develop a rook, because if I recapture, I can use my rook sooner. So I'm fine with that. So I'll take back in the middle. And they're saying, okay, we do want to trade queens. I don't like your queen. I say, okay, fine. I don't even mind those double pawns, because I get my rook and my bishop active early. They take back in the middle. I develop a knight. They bring their knight out. And now I'm threatening tactics again. Looking for a fork, seeing how they're going to defend it. Okay. They decide to move their king early, which is lovely. I love that. Now, some mistakes that could happen here. Sometimes they bring a bishop out, trying to defend it, and you're like, oops, I just hung my bishop, right? They could probably bring a rook in here in the middle, and the rook's centralized as well. Okay, that's kind of what I'd prefer, but if I were playing white. But and I'll also remember I have a developed A file here, which is also unusual. And so they probably don't want to move the rook. Now I get to get this D pawn out there so that the bishop can also get involved. Opens me up to attack. So this is kind of a nice time for white to buy some time, get their bishop developed. And my king is just going to step out of the way. I actually want to use this bishop maybe to defend here, so that I can have an extra helper here. And I don't want to just trade off right away. It seems like too easy to bring my king out for a trade off. I'd rather keep my king tucked back in here. Who knows if that's actually the best move, but in speed chess, that's sort of my decision making. Is keep the king hidden a little bit more safe. So we bring the knight forward. They bring their knight, in response. And so now notice king has moved, so he can't castle. So they're going to have to find a way to get the rooks involved. And this is where things looks like kind of interesting. I mean, I can force a trade of the knights here. And so my opponent chooses to do it in the center, and we'll take back with a pawn. I have not a passed pawn yet, but I have a nice grip here in the center, blocking in these dark squares. Bishop's not going to be able to really retreat, but I need to keep a hold of that grip, right? Can't. Their knight is now coming for my pawn, so this tactics here are kind of straightforward. I'm going to defend, and they come for my knight. Which, does my knight have anywhere good to go? No, nowhere great, but we'll see if they want to trade knight for bishop and fix my pawn structure. They don't, so I'm going to give an extra defender to my knight. They decide they don't necessarily want to trade off bishops either, and so I can get the E pawn comes to E5, and from here we can kind of re-attack in the center because G7 is helping, right? We're winning pawns there if they want to exchange, and we have plenty of defenders here to decide creatively how to handle the exchange. So they keep it closed up, and they're aiming for a passed pawn here, which is actually probably a great move. I would say this is a really strong move here, D5, not giving away to an easy exchange. So knight comes to the edge of the board, looking a little sketchy, but maybe you see an idea here that white is not prepared for, right? Yeah, do you see what I see? Yeah, a little fork action here. Let's see if they're ready to defend it. They do. They are. They bring the king back to E1, which is doing nothing to get their rook developed. Okay. Now, checking the time, I'm up on time here. I have about 150. My opponent's at 107. So I'm probably just trying to blitz moves here, attack the rook, even though it's on a fork. I see where they want to take their rook to. And these are, yeah, that's probably okay, but an interesting idea would have been also like a knight in the corner. Probably not a good move, but just funny. But I bring my bishop to A4, sort of tactics here for discovery, if I can get the knight out of the way, or even give a check or a double attack option. I mean, so this could be deadly. They bring a bishop in, so bishop can now, they're also sort of getting discovery ideas going this way, but they're also attacking the knight. However, my bishop is more than enough of a good defender here, so I actually do that funny move, double attacking the rook. This is great. And then knight could have taken here as well at some point. Of course, the rook comes here, and then we're aiming at the bishop. So it's kind of not a clear position by any means. But I'm trying to be a bully for sure. It seems like bully tactics here. Now my knight can check again, and I know that I've wanted to just sort of run this king around since I'm speed chess. I'm ahead on time. Make the king make a lot of decisions. Sometimes can be a useful strategy, especially if your opponent is, stronger. Make them waste time. Make them think. That's how you beat stronger opponents. You got to get them thinking. You can't just let them go into default move mode, right? So I'm checking your king a lot, preventing the development of that other rook, and now we're actually creating a tactic here to, I guess, yeah, see if they're willing to trade some pieces here, right? Pawns attacking the bishop. What do you want to do? You want to take my bishop? Like, I think white is thinking to take a bishop here, but it's also almost like giving this pawn up because they have enough attackers, and if my bishop recaptures, but now I'm setting up a skewer. It's hard to say. And so they use a pawn, which seems okay, right? So if I can't take because they can take, but I'm also seeing now. I wonder where's Rook C2 at, right? Because this, or do I just take the bishop? So a lot of ideas. I don't have a lot of time to think about it because it's Blitz. So it only took 4 seconds. I just grabbed the bishop. I said, let's trade some pieces off. Okay, and they take mine, which is fine. I saw another pawn to grab. But now my knight is looking like he's got troubles. He's sort of ran himself back on the rim, and it's looking dim because he can't come back to here. He can't come here. He can't come here. This would be a nice move if the rook wasn't there. If the knight wasn't defending the rook, right? So it looks like my knight is pretty much toast. And so I quickly accepted that after 16 seconds, I didn't really have a good way to save him. But it's like, maybe I do, right? Was it worth the think? I think it was worth the think because now I'm forking, right? So while I was thinking, right, I spent 16 seconds thinking, how can I save my knight? And I go, oh, if you take, and they only took 4 seconds to think about taking, and then they didn't see this fork coming. So I get that knight back. So there's going to be a time scramble coming down here, right? I'm working on pass pawn on the C file. My opponent's working on a pass pawn on the D file. We got bishop versus bishop, rook versus rook. Another pass pawn on the A file that's well handled here. So how's it going to go? Time crunch. The king's getting active again. They're going to get their rook involved. But I'm going to use the H pawn to force the bishop to decide where she's going to stand, or he, however you want to, is a bishop a man or a woman? It could be, like in modern days, I think they're either, right? Got jokes. So my king's just running around, 23 to 16 seconds here. Bishop returns. My king's again just running to the edge of the board, getting away from any potential queening. Now we haven't solidified my passed pawn. Unfortunately, there was some ideas I think where I needed to get my rooks in here sooner instead of running, but I needed to get my king out of the way too. So the king was sort of in the way. We're like, get out of the way so we can go. And so this actually is going to work out okay because now my bishop on g7 is actually defending, right? I'm down to 18 versus 13. Their bishop's under attack. They take the pawn. I keep attacking their bishop. They defend their bishop. I push up the H file to see if we can maybe deflect the bishop's defender away. Yes, we try that on H4. They don't go for it. They bring another defender in, and they're also attacking my E pawn. I'm just getting rid of material here. 11 seconds versus 7 seconds. I decide that I need to stop the pass pawn. Maybe. They bring the rook to B file. I'm trying to, just crush this passed pawn here. Of course, this is sort of a trick here, because if they take, then takes here, probably enough to at least make this a tricky draw. But they've crushed me down a little bit, 7-6, and they're defending their passed pawn. I'm trying to crush this passed pawn. 5-5 time here, and I decide to go for it. We're just gonna take that, and then they get a check in, which is not ideal. Bad timing, right? I needed to choose a different way to win this material. Now I'm down a bishop, 2 seconds. They're just checking me. I wasn't, of course, ready for this. I need to just take this rook. They're trying to, flag me, I guess. And so I don't take it, but I'm flagged. So hard to say. I think at this point, this endgame is a little sloppy. I love this idea of like me getting in here, got this passed pawn protected, setting up a small trick here. Let's look at this. If if rook takes, and my rook takes here, and then bishop takes, this, they can sort of end all my hopes here with, like, because then boom, boom, and their passed pawn's probably better than mine. It's pretty draw-ish. But then rook b6 also here. So come here. This is how the game actually played. 5 seconds for 6 seconds, 5 seconds for 5 seconds. So I think at this point I'm just way better off to just bring my rook over here. Rook h6 should be more than enough, but they're gonna. This gives back these passed pawns, but I can take here, and yeah, tricky, right? And if we exchange. And then, yeah, it looks like I'm pretty cooked, right? So I don't want to exchange there. So I think white's technically better in this situation because of these connected passers. My pawn's not going to get passed, but they flagged the crap out of me. So I think that really lit me up a little bit. All right, we're doing good. This review, you know, even if you've gone this far, there should be a lot of feedback here that you can sort of meditate on. If you feel like you're tapped out, go ahead, pause here, come back later. But I got a couple more in this tournament because, you know, tournaments you don't get time to pause in between, right? So this is why we save the good ones. When you're in the zone, you're feeling it, you save it somewhere. Right? I put it on my WordPress blog. Other people put them in their notes app. Some people pay for premium chess.com, save them all up in there. I mean, you have an archive, but you got to save the games where you're feeling it, and the tournaments where you really wanted to, you know, perform well. So I knew for sure after a game like this, I wouldn't be ready to rock on my next one. Okay, so next game up. Of course, I don't get. You know, sometimes I really prefer to get back to back as black. It's just sometimes it helps me with speed and everything, but at this time I go back to white pieces for game 4 of this tournament. So let's see, we got it loaded in. Yeah, here we are. So for here, we get a little bit of Coach Chad's white sauce. Okay, the white sauce, e4, c6 is the Carl Khan idea. I bring my King's Gambit pawns out, e4, f4. And a lot of times, yeah, the idea of like the Carl Khan c6, I think, is to get some activity in the center, make sure exchanges happen for your in your advantage, get your sort of the queen pawn can, you want to keep one there, right? So sometimes you end up with like just defending a bunch of pieces so that you win the exchange onto the d file. So you'll push that, sometimes you'll push your c pawn over here, or you'll get up here and do this if you're, you know, developing. But I'm e4, f4, getting my queen out, sort of like a wayward queen attack, if you will, sort of like a scholar's mate, if you will. Now my queen's being attacked, got to move her twice, right into the center. Interesting. Seems risky. I bet if you study here for long enough, you could probably find a pretty good way to wreck me. It also didn't even defend my pawn in the middle, right? So this was like a pretty obvious move here because it's like my queen is not doing great, so she's got to run around. She's going to do some work this game. Right? Now this is a trick in the opening, trying to see, oh, if you want to take this, free knight for me, right? So they don't go for that. They just try to trade. I wonder if the knight probably should have came in first to push my queen around some more. She just does not seem like she's gonna spot, but she's defended here, so I'll take the pawn exchange first and see if we can push the knight off. The knight does not want to leave first. Queen's trading first, and now the knight moves, and we push the knight again back. Knight's going to stay up on its outpost here. This was a Carl Khan starter. They traded into the middle, and they got an outpost knight, so they're probably quite happy at this point. If I were black, I'd be pretty happy for this position. I'm going to try to trade off that knight, of course, and say, yeah, well, I like that outpost closed pawns in the center, so we'll trade. And from here, I just completely blunder, I think. I mean, just giving up a pawn for nothing that I could have defended. Could have defended this here or here. So now I'm going to have to be tricky to find a way to justify this blunder. And maybe this is an interesting way to do it. Sort of setting up a hidden discovered attack coming through on the skewer side, but they're like, my opponent says no, like the rook can't even hang out there. So this is getting ugly quick because I wanted to just sort of trade off pieces, but you attack my king, Mira. So now my king's got to move. Getting rid of my dark squared bishop. You get to defend your pawn in the center. Keep your your queen pawn, which your queen's gone, but you still want to have a good pawn structure. And so my knight is going to see if centralizing can help. At least there's no pins going on for the bishop anymore. But the knight walks right into a pin, so now he's troubled. Okay, check from the bishop to see if we can loose anything up. And then let's see if we can move the bishop again. They defend with the rook. I get my rook on a better square here where it's defended by the b pawn. This rook is still doing an important job here. Can't really double up rooks yet, but maybe eventually. Right? It's usually the idea here is you want to get doubled rooks in the end games. I just don't. I think my pawn structure is just way too weak to salvage anything. So they can just gladly just trade everything off. Right? Trade rooks. And now I wonder if if there was a Zwishy Zug here for me to take, and then while they're defending this rook, take again. But I think it's better off to try to keep the material at least somewhat balanced. And I could have perhaps played g4 here, but I think I like this idea. Now we play g4 a second later. And interesting idea here. They can't really take with the pawn, right? So this is interesting because, of course, I would love them to take with the pawn because this should be enough to get me maybe an extra pawn back and give them, I can maybe win this, get back on d. I don't think I'll be able to get back on d in time, but with checks and everything, I mean, this could been the difference maker that I needed. But and I know that I need to get my king active. And maybe I can hold on to the center if I can get my king up here to defend it. So king's going to defend the rook as opposed to giving them a free pass pawn. And now it's just a battle of the light squared bishops, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns versus their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. So looks like I should have no chance, right? I'm just down too much, down 3 pawns. And bishops on the same colors. All they really need to do is trade them off. They should win the pawn endgame. But if I can keep them frustrated, maybe a blunder happens. Right? Maybe they try to get get en passant, and then I'm up a bishop, right? So they don't go for it, and I can just stay on the dark squares, right? Because in this light squared bishop game, if my pawns are on dark squares, they can't be captured unless the king gets around to them. And so using my light squares to try to support my bishop, we get a chance to play check. Now now that the king is up here on the A file, my bishop's kind of locked into defense here, and my king is hopefully able to hold off any pawn advances, but it doesn't seem great. And now their pawns are working together, sort of becoming like an elementary-ish endgame, looking like I'm down to 10 seconds. My opponent's got a lead in time. I'm racing back. I'm at least going to stop the first pass pawn, and then now they can break open on the former king side. And I don't really. I have to do something here. I guess if I push pawn, they're just going to snag it. So maybe better here is to just start eating their pawns instead of doing the exchange. But I was like, wait, are you giving me a free? And they weren't. They were going to come back and defend this. But I wonder. I mean, is that actually defended? Because it feels like I'm just. They got to give up a bishop here. So I think low on time, I was at 3 seconds. And I should have been able to push that off. I think I was just so low on time. I was like, let's see if I can save the draw. Yeah, because they totally did blunder. Yeah, so they totally blundered and flagged me out. So let's look at that. Right here, like just so this idea. Is just okay, right? They're giving me a passed pawn here. And after I bring my bishop back, I should just push. Because after that, they have to, and I can clean up. I have my passed pawn here. But I was 3 seconds left on my clock, so I'm just trying to eat their material, I guess. I'm like, so this is sort of I mean, it's a tough loss to take, especially being flagged 2 games in a row. Yeah. This is why we review, right? Because now when I see, I'm confident if I get in a time crunch situation, light squared bishops, I know that it's a difficult one to finish, even if they get started on it, right? You use the color concepts, defend your darkness, your dark squares when it's light squared bishops. Use your king, give them a job, and then wait for your opponent to blunder, right? They should probably just be pushing this center pawn, right? That's the way to finish this off. You don't give white any chance. If you're playing for black, you're just and then it's like what are you gonna do? And I go after here, just keep pushing. By the time I'm here, like I would actually, it's over here if I take that pawn to come back here. And then it's like, then they can just like have like I guess a waiting move or bring their king up. It's like waiting move, and they're gonna check me on the next move, right? So it's like, yeah, I should have definitely lost this game. So the flagging at the end, I guess I deserved it because it was just not solid. But never give up, right? Never give up, especially when you're on the journey to the top. Like these are games, critical points that could have been added to my account. stored this up so we could save it, review it, think about it a little better. And now, like, you see here, like, how it actually played out. I would, not the kings back there, I would take, and this is actually really interesting. Is it dead drawn? What do you think? Let me know in the chat. Should be dead drawn. Should we turn on Stockfish, see what they say? Yeah. Play it like this. And kings are just gonna dance. Right. Now this is where it gets critical, right? So it seems like, oh wait, maybe I'm lost, right? But if they take my pawn, I'm just never going to let their pawn get ahead, right? No way that their pawn is going to get to the end without them stalemating me, right? Now, it's critical, right? And Stockfish is just going to give up. They could stalemate me. Let's see if you're like a real one. Yeah, I mean, just stalemate. But, okay. But that's not the end of this tournament. We played 5 games this tournament, and Coach Chad hates to finish on a loss. It's like shooting free throws. It's like basketball practice, soccer practice, any of that. You like to win and on a W. So let's see what the final game 5 had in store. And I'll admit, probably a more fair rating matchup here for Coach Chad. That last game was a 2,000 rated player. First 2 games, all 3 of the other games were 18, 1900. We got a 1590 or 1569 here versus Coach Chad 1730. I think this is probably overall a fair matchup. Maybe Coach Chad's a little overrated, I think, in this at this time, especially on lead chess. Nevertheless, for black, rating does not matter. Coach Chad does not care. Don't care. Okay? Coming with the Borg, G5. They had started with E4 this time, so they have to make an extra move before they can actually take my free pawn. But I don't even care about defending it. And they don't care about taking it. Silly. And so here comes C5, trying to open up the long diagonal. They don't open. They stay closed. They defend with C3. So I bring my bishop out, more firepower, adding to the middle here. Okay. Plus the pawns adding there, right? Make that pawn a different color. Yeah. Okay. So they say no, and I say, well, let's gotta break some eggs to make an omelet, you know. And so bring my knight out again. We're getting more firepower in the middle now. We have 2 here, only 1 piece defending it. So are they going to add a new defender? What's the idea here, White? What are you thinking? They bring a new defender. Okay. So we again, I'll crack more eggs. You know, you want to take here, then I add a defender, I add a new attacker. Okay. So see, is that what they're going for? They're still trying to develop. So means I have plenty of time to capture back in the middle, right? So takes, takes, takes. And they don't take back castle. Now this pawn has multiple support system. So they takes, 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 and we'll say, you know, I like active. I like to have my rooks on open files, and if we can attack here, we'll just do it. Right? So it's actually like a free because I can't actually take back, right? But I do like the rook on the open file, so like I don't even mind losing this bishop pawn here, but they decide to take. And in this game, I've frustrated my opponent a lot. I have 2 minutes, they have 1 minute at this point. I'm 2:16, they're down to 59 seconds, so they're exchanging pieces like crazy. Queen comes in for check. King steps out of the way. Similar to what I mentioned earlier, there's other ways to defend this queen, but I don't want to give free trades. I'm more than happy to just let my king stay tucked back and see where white thinks they're going to have a later attack. Okay. Now they notice they've been unable to develop the bishop for quite a while now because, well, my queen's attacking in the middle, and we've been just so busy. It takes. So I'm actually going to be able to set up a sacrifice here because, like I alluded to earlier, open files on the king side are emerging. Okay. So the knight, there's definitely a very real attack here, right, coming up, and they don't go for it because, of course, if you take with the pawn, then the attack lives on. They probably see that, and they can't take with the queen because the pawn's the first primary attacker here. And they also have wanted to develop the bishop for a while. So they do develop the bishop, now that they can safely do so since their rook's defending b2. But is it too little too late? I think, right? So knight got his outpost. You didn't take my sacrifice, so I'm going to just be a savage, honestly. Savage knight taking on f2, setting up the rook being pinned. We love a pin. We love a pin. Okay, and when it's pinned, what do? We attack it again, right? When it's pinned, attack it again. Okay, so they have a creative idea here. I like this. Trying to move my queen first, since the queen's doing the pinning. Also sort of setting up this double attack here. But it's too little too late because my queen can do the bidding here, right? My queen can get out. She's being attacked. She can go do the attack herself and take that pinned piece. King stuck on the back row. Only one option here. Now I am still a little bit, cautious to this double attack here, but no one can check my. I mean, you can also check my king, but just for one move. My opponent's down to 4 seconds. I have a minute left. So after the king steps in the corner, I just play this sort of nice move here, being overloading the defensive maneuvers. But even better is probably rook to c2, threatening checkmate in 1. There would be ways to defend that, of course. Bringing the knight back, bringing the bishop over, bringing the knight here, or bringing the rook in, right? But it'd be a forceful idea. And so let's see. From this, we'll see from this cautious position, and then see if I was overly cautious. Okay, this will be our finale here. It's just to see how Stockfish would have finished this out. And they gave me a 2-point lead, which matches up to the board, right? That's what we would expect. I have a bishop, they have a bishop. I have a rook, they have a rook. I have a queen, they have a queen. I have a rook, they have a knight, which is about 3-point difference. I actually have an extra pawn on top of that. So their active knight is very active. They like that. Stockfish likes that. So they bring sort of queen in, pawn here, pushing the bishop off. Potential trades here. We're going to attack the rook, defends the rook. And then we're going to just keep attacking, defend this weak square here. And queen has to move. And pawns getting developed behind the rook. And finally they say, oh, I need to get rid of this bishop, I think. So we trade, takes. And I like this idea, rook attacking the queen. But if we can, now the endgame's starting to become a little more clear. If we can trade queens, it'd be quite simple. So white doesn't want to trade queens, of course. So they're looking at building a battery here. Also, looks like pawn storms are not too worrisome at this point because they're balanced. We're attacking and they're defending. Rook comes over here. Queen comes over here. Rook's sort of attacking over here, right? We can see that building, so they're going for it. And yeah, I think we could take if we wanted to, but Stockfish says let's just make this really strong. We don't need to take, and now they will, because there's just no, it's not going to be improved at all. And we could have tried to trade queens again. That probably would have done us. But that was a late idea by Stockfish, just came up at the last moment. And we'd already touched a piece. So now they're going to see if, like, yeah, they'll go for the trade again. And now the knight's going to be forced to move. Chase the knight around a little bit. Could try some tricks here, but see if they can come up with a late pawn storm. And this is a bold move here, rook for knight. But I think we just know that our pawns are way better, and they can't advance this pawn. So start to clear the board here, and eventually we're going to find a promotion and win by promotion, I would say. So here, white's not giving up, but there's little hope of saving this draw with 3 passed pawns. So I would bring the king up. Stockfish wants the pawns. And yeah, I think Coach Chad earned the solid W here. Would y'all agree? Let me know in the chat. Right? I mean, I got flagged real hard 2 games in a row, and finally earned this dub with passed pawns. If Stockfish would have taken over at the end, or even if they would have came back in a little bit earlier, right? Let's see. We started looking here. So what would Stockfish do after this? But I was sort of wondering, what would Stockfish do from this position? Would Stockfish even come back and worry about this threat after I forced the king into the corner? They do say that's the best move, but yeah, they had this idea as well, which is like, and then they would deal with it similarly, defend one way or another. I think this is just going to lose slightly quicker. Trying to maybe like tricks here. And then the queen still can't attack me. If they take, they're checkmated, so they have to defend. And they can't really, they want to sack a knight on the defense here. I wonder, why can't I take that knight? Is it bad? Oh, it is bad. That's tricky. Now we're back into a drawish. Ooh. So I give that a knight and emphasize. That knight, that's a really nice. It hits the rook too, so it's like, and then their knight can come back in here. We can pin exploit and finally bust them a little bit, but even so. Yeah. Then they're finally earning our strikes back. So I think that's more likely where this game should have gone, is something like this. This worrying about this huge blunder after they set up this fork. And it seems like there's hopeless. This is fantastic because the queen's got eyes on the rook. We can't just take, otherwise it is a drawish. So we got to look at this drawish endgame here, because look, this is the stuff that people don't study. Right? These are games that people lose or draws that you give away, right? I very easily could have given away a draw on this, even though it seemed like it was one, because now they have a really strong mating net that they're threatening against me. Now, oh yeah, so I can at least force it into a draw by, yeah, but they can save this. And now we have, like we studied earlier, same color bishop situation. This one much more drawish than the one that I was in. And the pawns are much more evenly balanced. So, whew. All right, we went a little bit over time. Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you found this game to be useful, of course, share it with your community, share it with your chess friends, or like, comment, subscribe. I'm Coach Chad. The Chess Zone is just a free project that I put together because of my love for chess. If you love chess too, make sure you subscribe to the Chess Zone and follow me on Instagram. You can follow the Chess Zone, Chess Zone. You'll find a whole bunch of my old archives, new stuff coming too all the time. And you can also get me on coffeefordessert.com. If you go there, you'll find the Chess Zone has its own homepage where I'm also working on getting more content out for you guys regularly. So, again, this has been this tournament has been burning a hole in my archives, but there's tons of games that I'm going to bring out like this. When I have a good one, I store it away, and I've got thousands ready to come out. And we're going to just let them all come out. If you enjoy them, please share. If you want me to help you directly in your chess efforts, maybe you're in Austin, Texas, or maybe you're in a different part of the world, feel free to reach out. You can email me, coachchad@coffeefordessert.com. You can, I'm sure, DM me on Instagram as well. There's a lot of ways to get in touch through my blog. So Coffee for Dessert is a great way to just connect with my community and my other students. So thank you for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck, and until next time, Never give up.